Melissa, I'm going to hand over to you, and I'll look forward to, prompting with questions, as appropriate. And I guess my opening question is, what is strategic pivoting?
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, listen, pivoting is just such a buzzword at the moment, and everyone's talking about it. And as Liz said, what I wanted to give you a little bit today is just sort of a kind of a 101 on what pivoting actually is. And so pivoting as a term is used kind of classically by tech startups, the likes of PayPal, the likes of Twitter, the likes of YouTube, are really famous case studies in pivoting. But it's actually a term and a process that's actually been used by businesses since businesses have been in existence. And I use it a lot when I'm taking my master's students through their pivots, and we're continuously pivoting and with startups. So it's just a process really of fundamentally shifting your business in response to meeting unmet market needs. And the process that we follow is really a process to find out what those unmet market needs are and establish sort of a product market fit. In a design thinking terms, what we do is we look for the intersection between three things. We look for things that are desirable for customers in the market. We look for things that are financially viable, that you can monetize and make money on. And we also look for things which are operationally feasible. And it's the intersection of those three things when they come together where the magic is. Yeah.
Thank you. So Melissa, what changes when you pivot?
Yeah, well, I think the thing is everything is up for grabs. Everything is up for grabs. It could be your customers change, your market changes, your products and services change, the way you monetize that can change, your operations can change, your user experience, the channels to market, your supply chain, your tech stack, anything can change. So I kind of think of it a little bit like, when you're playing netball and you catch the ball and you've got one foot on the ground and you've got to keep that one foot anchored, but the other foot can pivot anywhere. And that's the same kind of a thing as we have when we're ultimately pivoting businesses. And what we do, and the process that I take clients through is finding those anchors. And those anchors are really like your secret sauce. And those anchors, to be able to find them and then unlock them and then leverage them, becomes where the opportunity best lies. So, you talk about the work that I'm doing with Icehouse, in the discovery research that I did with you guys, what came about was actually that anchor, that strategically pivoting point was actually in your network and in your alumni and the relationships that you have with them. And it's not to say you don't have other assets, but that asset is a pivoting asset, what I call a pivoting asset. It's an asset that you at Icehouse are able to scale up, you're able to monetize, you're able to get strategic competitive advantage out of. And that's what we're looking for when we go through pivoting.
Thank you. Well, I'm sure I'm not the only one, this morning who's wondering, just about, how easy is pivoting? Is this a really hard thing to do, or can it be made easy?
It is actually a really, really simple process. And we're seeing now in COVID-19, so many companies pivot and do amazing things. And we've got case studies, everywhere and anywhere, in New Zealand and overseas, and there's beautiful, beautiful stuff that's coming about. It's a really simple process. It's doing three things, really. The first thing is gathering insights, insight from the market, from your customers, from your business operations, and you get that insight. And then secondly, you go through and you actually go, how do I interpret that insight? What is that actually telling me? And what you're looking for is you're looking for matches. You're looking for matches between where the need is and how you could best respond, how you could use some of the assets of your operations to meet that unmet need. And then what you go through is a process of innovation. And that innovation is to rapid fire develop new products or move into new channels or whatever it might be. So the key thing is well, there's two things to think about. One is to have sort of an open lens. And I'm a systems-based design thinker. So it's really important to open your lens up really, really wide. You're looking at the whole market opportunity. So just to use an example, you know, that we had a run on, what was it, toilet paper, we had a run on flour, then we had a run on hair dye. Oh my God, you know, what's happening? Everyone's going to the loo more, or, you know, dyeing their hair more, or eating more, and we're all going to come out fat. Well, the last point I'll put to one side, but it's actually, it's just when you look at the wider system, it's just a straight transfer. It's just a straight transfer from one channel to another channel. So when you do pivot, it's really important to look as wide to the opportunity in the market and as wide in your business operations as possible. The other thing that I say is you've got to be objective. And there's often a lot of myths or assumptions that can be at play. I think, you know, with you guys at Icehouse, there's a lot of, well, this is what's the truth. And actually, until you actually go out and you listen, and you deeply listen and observe, and you do that in a disciplined and a really intentional way, you can miss a lot of stuff. And I know when I presented to your board at that strategy offsite, and they were, oh, you know, wow, and it can be confronting. But actually, it's just discipline of going out and listening. So there's a whole lot of opportunity out there right now. You know, the Winston Churchill's, you know, don't let a good crisis go to waste, quote, is doing its rounds right now, because there's so much opportunity in this disruption for amazing growth.
Maybe you're going to cover it as you get through your slides, but, you know, what are the critical things you need to pivot?
Well, the first thing, and is what we've seen with lots of pivots that we're currently seeing right now, is that you don't need a lot of money. You know, that it's Rutherford, you know, we've got no money, so we've got to think, you know, really, really holds true here. You don't need money. When I was at Ecostore taking them through that massive transformation, we did so much on the smell of an oily rag, and we're seeing that happening all the time there. So you don't need a lot of money. And in fact, constraints like lack of money or lack of time, or just that peer pressure of actually, you know, meeting your mortgage, you know, creates a lot of creativity. But you do need to be intentional. And I think the example I mentioned to you the other day, Liz, was around, you know, I kind of think of it like when you're toiling the soil, you know, you in the planting process, isn't it? And it's mucky, right? And it's mucky, and you're donkey deep, you know, in the muck, and it's smelly and stinky, and you've got dirt underneath your nails. But actually, if you're being disciplined in getting the insight and you're intentional about it, then you know which seeds to plant, and you know which weeds to take out, and then you get your bountiful, you know, harvest. So you don't need money, but you do need to be intentional. And the other thing that I'd say, I don't know who we've got on the line here, but if you're reporting into a governing board, or you're a board member yourself, it does require a little bit of a risk reframe. You need to understand where the risk really truly lies, because the risk of doing nothing right now is far greater than the risk of doing something. But be prepared. I'll probably say fourthly, be prepared that things can change. You know, this is rapid pivoting. You know, if I use the example of like PayPal, they pivoted 5 times in 15 months. And so, you know, be open to continuous change. Yeah.
Well, there's certainly been some great examples of pivoting in action. So maybe that's our segue into the slides, Melissa. So I'll let you take over from here. Thanks.
Okay, so as I said, look, I'm giving you a bit of a speed dating approach, very, very condensed version on pivoting today. So this is the stuff that I teach over a number of different workshops and I coach into clients. So I'm trying to condense everything down. So there'll be stuff that I miss or what have you, but we can pick that up in Q&A. So I'm going to share my screen with you now, and I'm going to open things up. Hold on. Alrighty, so let me just pop you in here. Hold on. Okay, so alrighty, I'll just move you guys out of the way here. Alrighty, so the thing about pivoting, you'll see in front of you is one big hamburger. And I've tried to come up with a really simple way of describing pivoting, and I grabbed hold of the hamburger really as a celebration of us moving out of Alert 4 and being able to get takeaways. And I don't know about you, but I've been enjoying getting my burgers. So there's three things in a pivoting hamburger. The top of it is really all about your customers. And this is the demand. This is where the market is. This is what you're looking at in terms of the customers. And then number two is the value proposition. This is all about what value are you offering to your customers? What solutions are you providing to their problems? What unmet market need are you serving? And then the third is really the business operations. And this is really about how you respond. How do you supply to that demand? How do you meet those needs? And so if you look, there's actually, it's sometimes called the product market fit, but basically you're trying to sell the right products in the right way to the right customers. And when you do that, you have good product market fit. And then when you think about, well, what's my business model? Well, my business model is the way that I can efficiently and effectively monetize that and operationalize that. And that's about doing things faster, better, cheaper sort of thing. Now, the thing is around sequencing, and there's just a few sort of arrows around here. There's two different schools of thought around sequencing. And the point that I want to make here is it actually doesn't really matter. Classically, a design thinking process that's adhered to by the likes of IDEO and Stanford D School and Harvard and so forth, they start with looking at customers and working down. So you can see there in the orange writing, what's the customer, what are their problems, what's the solution to provide that, what's in the business model in terms of how I monetize that, what's my operating model in terms of my supply chain, my tech stack, etc. In pivoting terms, and also possibly because I'm a systems-based design practitioner, I'd actually recommend you look at both customers and business operations independently, and then look for matches. It's like Tinder dating, really. And so long as you've got a solid understanding of that market demand and the customer needs, you can dance down to reappraise your business operations and map those customer needs against your assets, to find where those Tinder matches are. So once you've had a chance to do that in terms of 1 and 3, then you can think about, your value proposition, and then you go back down to business operations and think about, well, how do I monetize that? And then how do I operationalize that? And that's a really just a savvy, smart way of doing things really, really fast. The key thing is just do what works for you, but be disciplined about looking at each in turn and doing that separately.
So Melissa, how do you do that in practice?
So, well, I'll say one thing first before we get onto that is just really about why do we lead with demand? So in practice, you need to lead with demand because you need to go where the market is, and that's fundamental of any pivot, but also any marketing-led or growth-minded company. And it's why we've seen so many repurposing their assets to create new value right now. We've seen, with the fashion houses using their factories to make, face masks, the perfume houses and distilleries shifting to hand sanitization, hotels being repurposed as self-isolation rooms and quarantines and so forth. So you've got to go where the market is first. So that's the first thing you need to do. And you also have to let go of any assets that no longer serve you. So no matter how valuable they used to be or how much that they cost you, if they're not part of your future, then they've lost their value. And the more or the longer you hold on to them, the more they're going to cost you. Yeah. But, and I'd say it's probably a big but, you've got to understand the time frames. So a rookie mistake is actually getting rid of staff when the lights are turned off, only to actually find you spend more time and money and energy rehiring, retraining them when the lights come back on. And there's a beautiful example that Hilton Hotels did actually over in the US, where they said, well, look, you know, part of our secret sauce is our staff, and so they actually rented out their staff. They have a workplace redeployment centre that rents out their staff. So in practice, you know, you want to lead with demand. Yeah. So if we think about that and think about customers, there are two questions that you want to be asking yourself. The first is, what's the problem you're actually trying to solve? And who has this problem? And this determines, you know, the focus that you put to things. And it determines the market that you're in. So it might be current needs or it might be new needs. It might be current markets or it might be new markets. So have a think about that. And you know, you might be thinking, okay, is it the same market? Is it the same need, but a new channel, for example? You know, we've seen, as I mentioned before, that run on toilet rolls and flour and hair dye is just shifting out of the office, the cafe and the hair salon to home. Right, so Les Mills is a great example of how they've quickly and rapidly shifted. Nano Girl, another beautiful example of rapid pivoting to the home environment and creating real value. It could be it's the same market, but it's new need. And we've seen that a lot in hospo, you know, rapid and repeated pivoting from the kitchens converted to takeaways, home deliveries, you know, contactless stores and so forth. Or it could be a new market with a new need. And I was reading just the other day about a beautiful company called Fiasco Cases. And they build stages for live rock music events. And they found themselves staring down a barrel of nothing. And they pivoted to produce home office furniture. And then they went to pivot again to making screens for contactless service. So the key thing is you've got to find what those unmet market needs are. And in practice, to your question, Liz, you know, you get on the phone, you know, you call your customers and you listen to them. And you then, when you've done that, and separate to that, you look at a market and you look at each industry in turn. And then once you've done that, you look for patterns, you look for relationships, you look for trends. You see who else might have similar needs or going a little bit deeper, and you look across different time frames and different markets. And that's particularly the case if you're an export. You know, think about what does this mean currently? What does this mean in Alert 2 when we're contained in New Zealand, maybe opening our borders to Australia, going back out globally? You want to think about that kind of stuff. So the next thing when we look at is we look at our value proposition. And this is all about the solutions that best address the problems your target market, your target customers have. So, you know, this might be current product services or it might be new products and services. So you're thinking here, can I fulfill an unmet market need? You know, can I make my product a service or vice versa? You know, and I was looking just, you know, Time Hub has created this beautiful My Visitor Log, which is this online service that allows customers to use their own device to record when they visit a business for contact tracing purposes. Now that's a demand that didn't exist before, yeah? So you're getting through disruption, so many new needs coming out. And you're going, okay, well, how can I best supply that? And they did a beautiful innovation this year. Or as I mentioned with Nano Girl before, you know, she went from running large scale events to providing online STEM learning platform. So yeah, you want to think about that. The other thing to think about is better focusing on what customers love about what you do. And like I mentioned with the Ice House, you know, what customers and clients that you have most love is that connection with each other. So how do you hone in on that? You're wanting to create something that's desirable for them, and also ideally differentiated from customers. But just be mindful, because there's so many juggling balls in the air right now, don't focus too much on being different from competitors, because they're changing too. The most important thing is to focus back, you know, on the need and how you meet those needs.
Ooh.
And then the last thing that we really go into, and forgive me, I'm sort of trying to go through this at pace, is really around your business operations. And you want to look at this in turn in terms of, you know, what parts of your business operations or the assets that you have can you leverage? And then Secondly, and separately to that, you want to look and go, well, what assets and operations need changing in response to? So we do that. And when you're looking at that, you're thinking, can I create value from existing assets? Can I monetize my value propositions differently? And, you know, like we've seen with hair and makeup artists or dance and yoga instructors, you know, everyone's going online and selling based lessons and tutorials and so forth. So there's a huge different way of actually monetizing things right now. When you're looking reactively, you're thinking about better adjusting yourself and your operations to meet the changing landscape. And so that's, as I said before, what so many cafes and restaurants have done, you know, with home delivery and so forth. The other thing that I'd say here is thinking about your supply chain, and this is particularly relevant. You know, so many people have supply chains that actually, you know, so many clients and find they're not even aware of their supply chains because there's so many middlemen in the way. And then all of a sudden, COVID, they all get, you know, turned off. And it's, you know, it's a mad, you know, scramble. So, you know, it's really useful to look at your supply chain and go, well, can I do things radically different here? You know, can I not just be better, faster, cheaper, but can I be more local? And especially as we come out of this, and there'll be a huge, you know, energy around New Zealand Inc. And so sourcing onshore, you know, is a really powerful marketing story and tool for you to leverage more. So how do you do that in practice? You know, I almost, what I'm saying to my clients is get 3 sheets in front of you and have one sheet which is, you know, you map out what's changed and go through everything in turn, all the pieces of your business operation, and look at soft stuff as well as hard stuff. You know, things like, you know, relationships, IP, data, knowledge. You know, you're looking at that stuff in equal value and merit as the harder stuff like materials and operations and staff. So do that on one sheet, and then on a second sheet, you know, wearing that strategic customer hat, appraise each, you know, piece of your operations as if it were an asset. And think about ideas to monetize and leverage. And when you generate those ideas, you know, more is more. You know, design tools here about, you know, fast, you know, Pomodoro technique, fast 10-minute sprints, lots of ideas, more is more, no filtering, no judgment, no black hats in the room, that sort of stuff. And then the third sheet, you know, you mark out what needs to change to reflect new value propositions that you're thinking about. And so when you've done that, you know, calibrate all of that together, review across all of those sheets and calibrate that. And as I say, I have found in my past that actually the most powerful pivots that I've done with clients have actually been from developing really, really deep understanding with your business operations. And there's a lot of hidden potential that's often hiding in plain sight. So what I kind of call it is your secret sauce. You know, where is your secret sauce? You know, is it in the relationships that you have? You know, is it in the market that you're in? Is it in the ingredients or the supply relationships? Or, you know, so you're looking across everything in turn, and what you're trying to do is find out where your leverage point is and working from that. And then you go, okay, well, what assets could I better utilize? So some of the things that I'd recommend you do, and these are sort of some tips, as it were, and traps to think of, is firstly is, you know, being adaptable is your biggest asset. You know, again, another lovely quote that's doing the rounds is that Charles Darwin one. You know, it's not the strongest of the species that survives or the most intelligent, it's the one that's most, you know, adaptable. So, you know, being adaptable is everything. Some people think you need lots of clarity. No, you know, you get the clarity from doing. So classic of a design process, you test and learn and refine from there. You move quickly, you know, short, sharp sprints. And the examples I've given you today are really a case in point of that. But I would say know where you stand on the journey. And and you know, at the one end it could be that just the lights are switched off, or at the other end it could be that the landscape is fundamentally changed. And quitting is an option, and it's a really pragmatic option, and there's nothing wrong in that. And Seth Godin in the dip, you know, talks about, you know, winners, and the winning approach and winning mentality is about quitting the right things at the right time. So just know, you know, do a little bit of homework first on that. And the other thing that I'd recommend is when you're mapping your future model, circle back and go, okay, so what does that mean now? You know, how do I actually protect those essential assets? I've identified a part of my future, and how do I look after them really well as I transition? And how do I rapidly eliminate, you know, those non-essential assets? And from a governing perspective, if you're on the board or reporting to a board, you know, make sure that the decisions that you make are consistent with that future model that you're creating. And as I said before, you know, be really prepared that those decisions are going to change, because this landscape is changing. So stay open. Yeah. So look, I've given you a rapid, very condensed version today. I do have a whole lot of tips. So and I haven't mentioned them all today, and I do teach this stuff. So if you are interested at all, flick me a text. I'm just putting up a slide here with my details. If you want some free tips on the process of insight, on the process of interpretation, on the process of innovation, flick me a text. There's my number there. And just type in free tips. And write your name and your email, so I've got something to get hold of you by, and write down insight, or you need tips on insight, or tips on interpretation, or tips on innovation. I am actually running some virtual workshops coming up, and the dates are there. So if you're interested in any of those, log them down and flick me an email. So melissa@tensegrity.co.nz. And then we can go through this a little bit more. But that's my speed dating kind of snapshot on strategic pivoting.
Thank you, Melissa. And there are some questions, and so we've got a little bit of time for those. So I might just start out, you know, with those questions. Guys, if you haven't put your questions in the Q&A, please do that now, and that way I can make sure that we're not missing any. But from Luke, the question is, what model do you use in pivoting, Melissa? Is it balanced scorecard, or one of them potentially? Is there a particular model?
Oh gosh, I've used a lot of models in my time, and they're all and I've taken something from all of them. The model, I use two ones in the main. The first one is that design thinking, you know, the three circles, which is it desirable for your customers? Is it financially viable for you to monetize and make money off it? And is it operationally feasible? So that's one model that I always fall back on. The other thing, the model that I do, and you know, when I talked about that Tinder matching, you know, between what's the market need and what assets do you have, I look at four things, and I'd include actually a fifth now. But firstly, you know, is there high demand? You know, you want to know that demand is there, and you want to know that demand is sustainable. You know, it's not just going to turn on and then turn off, you know, when things, you know, change or what have you. So you look at demand first. You look at, am I going to get a high return on this relative to other things that I'm doing? So you look at your return on investment. You look at, can I scale it? Ideally, you know, this is about scalability. And this is in the ideal world, but actually not is the case with these. So many of these pivot examples we're seeing right now are real scalable plays. The fourth thing I always look at is around differentiation, you know, and this is not just, you know, short-term differentiation. This is about building strategic competitive advantage. And the fifth that I'm adding on right now, which is speed. You know, can I develop it at speed? So those are the five things I also look at. Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, I think you're seeing, you know, a lot of that pace versus perfection. You know, it doesn't have to be 100% right, because what matters, you know, at the minute is speed. So
Exactly.
You know.
And I'd say on that, and one of the things I always talk to my students and clients about is 80-20. You know, 80-20. Can I do it 20% of effort, 80% of result? It's not perfect, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Go with speed. Cost of time is greater than the cost of the paralysis by analysis. Yeah.
Great. Hopefully, Jeffrey, that answered your question as well in terms of frameworks. So I'm going to move on to you know, a question around, you know, in your experience, this is from Peter, in your experience with clients, which aspect of these phases, this process, do organizations struggle with the most? What do they, what's your experience of what they get stuck on?
Great question. I would say the clients find me the most powerful in my ability to go out and actually gain the insight. That's the hard part, because it's really hard for people to listen and know how to listen. And people often think, well, this is what my customers need. Oh no, you know, when you spend deep time with them, you can find something else to be true. Or even just looking at the market and actually looking at it with a real open, you know, 30,000 foot view and microscopic foot view, that can be hard. And so there are tips and techniques around that, which I won't go into in depth today, to navigate through that. And, you know, I get a lot of feedback from my clients, you know, which say, wow, you know, I thought I understood my business. You know, I think of your board, I think of, you know, what Andy has said, you know, I think of other people have given me feedback, which is, it was hiding in plain sight. I thought I knew my business and would reframe that for me. So that's a challenge. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Let's be specific for Sue, but I'm sure there are other examples, you know, of similar cases where, you know, the situation has really created, you know, an inability for us to deliver our business. Sue has a massage therapy business, and she feels really stuck about how she can pivot.
Yeah.
Any thoughts there?
Yeah. The thing is, I'd say to any massage therapist or anyone who's doing body work, you know, contact work. One is your market is a New Zealand market. So the good news is we are a very good country. We're well on the way to squashing the curve, and so our ability to open up will be sooner than any, you know, so many other countries. So that's the positive side. So really, you know, this is in terms of that spectrum that I mentioned. It's not that your future has fundamentally changed. It's that you need to hunker down in the storm and be okay with the lights being switched off for a while. So in that time that's happening, obviously, you know, you need to manage your livelihood and your financial livelihood and so forth. But in that time, what can you do with that? And so a lot of, and some of the advice that I'm giving on Manaki right now to questions like this is really around, well, okay, so how can I provide tips and how can I be of service to my clients? How can I give them information? How can I be a thought leader in this time in terms of better actually describing the techniques that I use in massage therapy? How can I give them tutorials or tips or what have you for doing this at home, for self-care? How can I be of service? So yeah, there's a lot that you can do in this time. You could research up, you could hone in on your techniques. There's a lot of free stuff in educational facilities around the world right now. I've signed up to so many myself. I haven't got around to all of them. I'm a bit busy because I'm pivoting myself right now. So, but there's a lot of free stuff out there that people can access that you can utilize. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. You might get one or two, some great questions here, and just trust, guys, that if we don't get time to answer them now, we will, Melissa will get to those before they're published. So Liam's asking a question about what behaviors do you believe enable rapid innovation, and how do we reframe towards innovation for the future versus just delivering short-term wins, you know, or cash flow. So something that, you know, might create a more sustained approach to innovation than just, you know, quick wins.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Again, because I'm a systems-based design thinker, I'm actually trained in economics as well as marketing. I go big. So one of the things that I did when this happened is I did a 40-year analysis of our GDP as a country, and I looked sector by sector. I'm a bit of a geek. I then looked across all of our trade partners, and I looked at their nations, and I looked at their exports, and I looked at the balance sheets of all of us, and I looked at our, you know, the drivers of our exports and our imports, and I mapped that out in timeframes, and I said, okay, you know, what are all the things, you know, that are impacted for now, and what are all the things that will be impacted in the future? And so I looked at each in turn to go, where are the structural changes happening? Where is there latent demand that's been, you know, where are the unmet needs? The other thing is I got stimuli. So I did a lot of reading. I was spending a lot more time reading and absorbing stuff. And some of that stimuli, there's a wonderful website, Open IDEO. I don't know the exact URL, but if you type in Open IDEO, that's open, like open and close, and then IDEO, IDEO. They've got a worldwide global open forum for innovation ideas across all different sectors. And it's a wonderful little resource just to stimulate, just to give you stimuli to help your thinking. Because it can be hard, you know, when the amygdala is firing, a dash to think about what to do. And there's a lot of great stuff out there. So that's useful too.
Good. Thank you. So there's a couple more great questions in the Q&A, but we're going to have to wrap it up. So Elena will do her magic and she'll make sure that those questions get pulled down. Also have a look in chat and make sure there's nothing there that we don't want to miss. But couple things to say. Elena will pop up as you leave in the chat. There'll be a link to the evaluation. Evaluation is really important to us and to Melissa. So you can take some time just to give us some feedback on the session this morning. That would be awesome. It'll also, the link will also pop up as you close and leave the meeting. So thank you guys for joining us. Thank you again, ATEED and the Regional Business Partner Network for your support. Of course, thank you, Melissa, for your wisdom, your insights, and that come from the incredible experience you've had. Just remember, guys, if you want more tips, to text that through to Melissa. And if the workshops that are running over the next little while are of interest to you, then you can get some detail on that too. And of course, the upcoming 2 webinars, the next 2 in this series, you'll see as they get announced for those dates in a couple weeks' time. So thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Have a great rest of the day.